You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Hello, and welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Artis Kadu, and today with me, I have a very special guest, Brian Kuiper. Brian is, we just discussing this. He's the data guy, of course. He's the director of content strategy and assessment at University of Rochester, and you probably have seen him in a lot of different conferences talking about AI. You probably have seen him in a lot of different webinars talking about AI. He's very active on social as well. And you probably have also downloaded or even read some of his marketing books. So he has quite a few of those as well. And the last thing that I know about, or the most interesting I know about Brian, is that he is an expert skydiver. So that's the thing that I want to go first. Hey, Ryan, welcome to Generation AI.
Hi, Artis. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So let's talk about your skydiving. How many jumps have you had so far?
I think I'm up to 2,958, I think, after last
2,958.
Getting close to the 3,000 mark.
That's impressive. So, when you look at skydiving and right now, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to go for a couple of dives this Friday. And I'm like, man, it's like, I wish I actually played golf just like Brian goes in skydiving. He's like, oh, this is your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love golf courses because they're great to land on. There's no telephone lines or power lines. That's really my only thing that I like about golf courses. But
all right, so we'll kind of talk about something that we both have in common, and that's AI. We just debuted your new podcast on the Enrollify Network called AI for You. So obviously the pun there is being for universities, so AI for universities and for you. And the whole idea about this new podcast is that we're taking practical applications of AI and how they get applied to university settings or jobs that folks are doing at the university or any college. And also you're bringing in interesting guests to talk about how they're using AI specifically in their day-to-day work in higher education. Something that I haven't done. Like we usually go deep in topics, but tell me a little bit more about the podcast itself.
Yeah, so I'm really trying to focus on like really practical, easy to implement kind of use cases where people could turn around in the same day and start figuring out how to leverage those tools to do these things to help them, be more efficient at their job, be more effective at their job. And the guests I've talked to so far have so many just incredible ways to use these tools and really across kind of any administrative role, we're really focusing on that. So I'm the chair of the Marcom AI committee at the University of Rochester. We're part of the larger AI council. And, the AI council is made up of 5 different kind of domains. So clinical is one. So we have a big medical research facility. So they're really focused on how to use it within the clinical patient care process. Then there's the research arm where they're doing all this, world-class research and how to, integrate AI into that. Now we've got the academic side, of course, so teachers and students figuring out how to use it in the learning process. And then there's the administrative, so every group across the institution, every department, every school has, the HR people running the team, so they need to know how to use AI. And then I focus specifically on the Marcom and how to use it for marketing and communications. So when we first started this Marcom group, we were really just looking at marketing roles and how you could use the tools for, making your jobs easier, making you more productive and more effective, providing more value for your students. But as we started talking with these other groups, we found different ways they were using the tools that were directly applicable to the ways that we could use the tool. So now we're creating much more collaboration between the different groups. We're sharing different ways we're using the tool. For example, on the academic side, our business school started creating these virtual teacher's assistants, virtual TAs. So if your regular TA wasn't available or your professor wasn't available, you could just go to the virtual TA and ask it the questions. And they were using custom GPTs and chatbots to do that. So then we started thinking, well, we could create virtual personas for marketing. So when you're creating a new piece of content for a prospective undergraduate student, you can go bounce it off of this virtual, custom GPT chatbot and see what's missing from the content or what it likes or what it doesn't like. And that's been, extremely helpful.
It was interesting that a paper came out not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that they were looking at simulating people and interviews and kind of experts, and essentially rather than going out and doing this massive study to a lot of people and just asking them about different things, you can simulate now. The AI is really, really good at simulating a persona really, really well, sometimes even better than an actual persona. So it's really interesting, like what the impact is of that on just the marketing. It's like, I want to know my customer. I want to know, who I'm selling to. I did the same thing with, we tried to do some positioning work the other day. And, I entered basically our positioning stuff. And I'm like, all right, now think about this. You're the VP of enrollment and marketing, and grade this pitch to me on the bullshit scale and blah, 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 all of these different things. And it came back and it's like, it's really, really good. And it's just, you hit all of the things that you need to hit. So that's really interesting. So what do you think about on the marketing side? What's the most, like the stuff that is impacting marketing the most right now that's AI focused?
We're just integrating this into our team. So we're picking easy use cases, like low hanging fruit stuff that's low risk. It doesn't have any sensitive data, anything like that. So we're doing like write alt tags, write meta descriptions, right? All these things that you don't want to do anyway, that take way too much time, that don't really matter a lot. I mean, obviously you need the accessibility with your alt tags, but it's a huge time suck. And AI does such a great job with that. And you can upload 30 images that you're using on your website, and it'll spit out 30 different alt tags in 30 seconds or less. And you don't have to do all that work. You save all that time. So the time savings is, the first thing that we're going after. But when we're looking further down the road, I really think it's, the micro targeting, the focused personalization that you can do with these tools. Once we're at the point where we're comfortable, either we have an environment that's completely, behind our firewall, which we're working on, or we're figuring out how to, get our student data into the tools, then we're going to be able to provide like individualized, very specific content for each individual student. There was a use case. I was talking to someone, and they had a use case where the students were going to like a career fair kind of thing, and they would fill out a form, and typically it would take like a week before they would get an email back because it had to get put into their CRM, and then someone would have to, get the drip campaign going and get the content in there. And it was only personalized with their name, at the top of it, and the program that they had selected that they were interested in. So they were able to use ChatGPT and Zapier to immediately push the form into their CRM. And then it immediately created a very personalized, focused email response to them that gave them all sorts of information about, different programs of study that they could pursue, or, different news stories they might be interested, or different faculty that might have the same interests of them. And then someone reviewed that. A human actually looked at it all to make sure it was good before it went out. But within 5 minutes of filling out the form, they got this personalized, very focused communication back, and it made them feel special, like this institution really, wants to help me out and wants to give me all the opportunities. And I'm not going to have to go search for this and try to figure this out on my own. So I think that's really going to be an incredibly helpful way that these tools can start creating really good experiences for the students. There was another institution that is monitoring students' grades and attendance, and when they start seeing a drop-off, they can notify a counselor to reach out to the students and offer resources and check in with them. And, we got mental health resources, we got study resources. How can we help you, stay more focused? That episode will come out in 2 Thursdays, I think. But it's just a really smart use of the technology. They're seeing retention rates increase because the students feel like someone out there cares about them and someone wants them to succeed. And sometimes that's all they need to, get over that, homesickness, or, the when you first come to a campus, you don't know anybody. That's a really unpleasant situation to be in. So even having like a student counselor or someone that reaches out to you and says, hey, I see you're struggling and we want to help. What can we do? So I think those are really going to be, very effective uses of the tool. On my first episode, Mark Schaefer was talking about how we can use AI to create more human experiences. And I think that's like a great example of that, is the AI will identify the problems and then the humans will help remediate that problems by providing that connection.
So that's really interesting that one of the episodes that you're talking about is this idea of personalization. So we've been talking about in marketing around personalization forever, right? It's all about that segment of one. How do you really get personalization at scale? And AI gives us that ability to do that now. But until now, we didn't have the ability to do content at scale. It's like you had to bring in another person, and you bring another person, a writer, a designer, whatever it was. And that person had to kind of put content together. So maybe you could get to like a segment of, I don't know, like 10, 20 different segments that you can personalize it along those ways, but not really at the, hey, Brian is coming in. I know that, he's a data nerd. He loves data. He likes skydiving. And then, he's also into AI. It's like, how do you put those 3 things together and create a segment out of that? It's crazy. So I mean, I'm really, really excited about that part as well. And it sounds like there's schools that are already doing it. We're actually incorporating a lot of that stuff into an element right now. So these are all reactive things, right? So it's like somebody coming in and, filling in that inquiry form, and then now you have to reach out to them. But this idea, the second use case that you mentioned, seeing that grade drop and then proactively reaching out to somebody. So a lot of folks have a little bit of a mental barrier and a little bit of a fear when you talk about agents and this idea of being autonomous agents. So we don't like to call them that. Maybe we can call them like proactive AI assistants, so to speak. So what are your thoughts around the state of where we are right now?
Well, I think every company out there creating AI tools is rapidly pursuing this personal assistant AI capability. And I think that, it's a matter of maybe a year or two before we're going to have those AI assistants. I mean, what if you could get, when students come to your campus, what if you could load on their phone a personalized AI assistant that would say, hey, I know you like bowling, so here I'm going to show you where the bowling alley is on our school. Or I know you like this type of food. Well, here's a place in the student lounge where you can go and you can get, really good Mexican food or whatever it is that you like. And those are the types of experiences that will add a lot of value and will create, an appreciation. It will create a connection with those students that they feel like they are being catered to. And I know I've got like custom GPTs that I make that help me with my meal planning. They help me with my fitness routines. And it just takes all that mental load off of me. I don't have to sit down and figure out what we're having for dinner tonight. I can just go to ChatGPT and ask it, what's a good meal for us, and give me the recipe and give me my shopping list, and off I go. And so I think taking that mental load off of students where they don't have to be like, oh, how do I find my next class? Where's the building? How do I get to the elevator? The phone would have all of that. It would, it would just guide them right to their individual class. And that opportunity to be able to provide that sort of value at scale didn't exist before now. You couldn't you couldn't have the time or the resources to create all those individualized plans for everybody. And now we can.
that sounds like great. That sounds really exciting. And like, do you feel that institutions are there today mentally?
No, I mean a lot of institutions, even our institution, there was a lot of hesitancy about adopting AI because the data issues, the copyright issues, the bias issues. There are a lot of issues that you have to go in eyes wide open when you're using these tools. You have to understand that these are not copy paste solutions at this point. And there are cases of schools and brands using these tools and having detrimental effects because either they weren't transparent about the fact that they were using these tools and someone found out, or they were just using them in the wrong way or putting out inaccurate information without double checking it. So there really has to be a lot of awareness and education about the risks of using these tools and the best ways to use these tools whenever you start adopting that. And higher ed tends to be averse to change, tends to be slow to change, which is problematic because AI is changing so fast and it's moving so aggressively. It scares a lot of people in leadership. It scares a lot of people who are like, I've been doing my job for 30 years in the same way. And now you're going to tell me that, I'm not going to have to do half of my job. And, am I still going to be needed? And, we're always telling people these are not tools to replace your jobs. These are tools to augment what you do and to give you more time doing the things that really matter, that are really important, the creative things, the strategic things, and less time doing the repetitive things, the data analysis things. It can do all of that for you. You just have to trust that, you have to understand how to use it, how to leverage
Right.
it. So, but I think there's a lot of resistance at a lot of institutions, but there are a lot of institutions that are, full speed ahead, driving into this very intelligently, really focused on ethical applications. And, we know these tools can do a lot of things. It's up to us to decide what they should do and where you really still need the humans in the process.
This whole idea of humans in the loop versus on the loop. When it comes to AI agents, it's like, well, right now we don't trust to the output, or we don't trust this to do its own thing. But I feel that there's been like a couple of, if you think about it, a couple of rotten apples, so to speak. It's like, remember when the lawyer who submitted the fake case precedents, and then everybody was quoting that use case, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like that's been true for technology forever. It's like there's been the people who don't understand, or like the bad use cases, or the bad use of it. But we haven't been so fast to just say, like, this is bad for us, right? It's like, it's really been incubated a little bit. And then really the proliferation of that technology has been a little bit slower. But what we're seeing now is that the technology before came into the enterprises first, perhaps, or the larger organizations, where there was already this ability for them, this experimentation that was happening, and it was in research labs most of the time. So this idea around risk was already there. So they were risk tolerant. Whereas now we're seeing this technology be available for everybody. And when you introduce that to an organization, or to a school or an institution that is risk adverse, and then you're saying, well, there is a 0.05% chance that this thing is not going to give you the right thing, or is going to lie to you, or hallucinate, everybody goes like, what? That's crazy. Meanwhile, it's like, we've been dealing with that in programming, and with bugs and all these things like forever. So it's like we have to live in that gray area, be like, well, we're going to put as many things around it as possible, but we know that technology is not always going to do the right thing, right? It's always going to, there's that small chance. So I think because of the speed and the access for everyday people, like, we're getting access to the same models and the same LLMs and the same advanced technology as, IBM and Microsoft and Apple and all of these organizations. They're not getting access faster than we are. Like we're getting access the same day almost, as in some cases even earlier. But that's a very different, like we haven't seen that before. So this is very, very different from any technology before.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the biggest impact, or, the biggest change is you don't have to code now. You don't even have to understand how it works. It just works. You just ask it a question. I mean, it's conversational. You just tell it what you want it to do, and, it does it. And, it's like, we don't understand, how most of us don't understand how our cars work. We just get in them and drive and get point A to point B. And, when cars first came out, people thought that, oh, these things are never going to, it's never going to work. This is too, the production is too slow. They're too expensive. And, things certainly evolve and technology has changed. But I don't think there's been any technology shift that has, kept the pace or the speed of advancement that we're seeing with AI right now. And I think one of the biggest problems for higher ed is that the first implementation, the first things that we started hearing about were students using it to cheat on their papers.
Right, exactly.
And so that immediately a whole bunch of schools said, we're banning AI. You can't use it at all. I thought, well, that's not the right answer, because students are going to they're going to be expected to use this in their jobs when they go out in the real world, because companies are going to expect them to know how to use AI. So we better start teaching them. We better start figuring out how to teach differently and how to evaluate knowledge transfer differently than we have for the last 1,000 years in education.
It's incredible. I do have an example. So the other day, my daughter, I was asking them about, it was a plagiarism paper that they had to sign. And they actually, this year, they added an AI clause to it. It's like, I will not use any AI tool, including but not limited to ChatGPT, Perplexity, or whatever. I'm like, oh, at least they know some of the tools that are adding in there. But
right.
But like to do any brainstorming or anything like that. So I'm like, like essentially they're saying you can't use this AI tools to help you learn. So it's like what you mentioned before around bringing AI to the classroom and having a digital twin, or asking the professor something with all the material. That's the equivalent of the same thing here. But now in 6th grade, they're actually adding that AI clause in there. So anytime I want to show my kids or whatever, it's like, I'm like, oh, why don't you just ask ChatGPT to explain how this thing works? And it's like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, that's a really tricky issue, because, this is such a great, it's like telling them you can't use a calculator.
Exactly.
You need to understand, right? You have to understand how to do the math. Absolutely. You have to understand the concepts. But once you understand those concepts, you should be using a calculator, so yeah. And, and I understand it for writing too. You don't, if you just let everyone use ChatGPT to write your papers, no one's ever going to learn how to write. So you do have to understand the fundamentals of writing and storytelling. But once you get to that point, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use these tools to help you brainstorm and come up with different ideas and figure out what you're missing. Here's a story. What doesn't make sense? What's missing? What would make the plot more exciting? As long as you're not copying and pasting, I don't see the problem in using these tools.
Yeah, I mean, craftsmen have been using tools to get things that are really weird and more expensive, and they've been able to do things that are unimaginable, right? But they use the tools, and they sometimes build their own tools. So it's like, this is yet another tool, but it is a very different tool, because it's not a tool for amplifying our physical or work that we do in our environment. It's a tool to amplify knowledge and amplify our knowledge work. So when you look at it, it's like, as we moved on as an economy, like a knowledge economy, now this thing comes along and says, you know what, we're going to amplify that knowledge, or even be able to kind of replicate it and fit into all these different areas. So the speed at which that's able to do those same knowledge tasks can now be replicated by AI, and we're not ready for it. And it's like, only those that are the craftsmen, so to speak, are using it effectively, and they see it as an amplification tool, but everybody else sees it as a, you know, as a threat because it's going to do the things that they do today. Like, you're a craftsman, obviously. Like, we you're like, this is great. I'm going to use it, and I'm going to amplify my work, and I'm going to do things that I was not conceiving of before. But not everybody has that mindset.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of, and we run into that at the institution a lot when we go to these, we hijack people's meetings. We're like, we're going to come into your meeting. We're just going to show you 15 minutes. Here's some of the things we're using AI for. And a lot of people, when we're done, are like, well, that's my job. That's what I do. Like, well, we can find something more productive for you to do. And they're like, we like doing our job. It's like, well, then we have to figure out how to upskill people into, a job that can't be done by AI.
Yeah.
And we know that as this technology gets smarter, it is going to replace jobs. There is going to be, economic impact, and there's going to be career impacts for people. So we really need to start thinking about these long-term effects of, the advancement of AI. And I don't see why, universities aren't great places to start thinking about and having these conversations and figuring out what we can do and how we're going to, keep society moving forward if people don't need to work as much or they don't need to be doing the things that they have been doing. How could we use their time and resources in a way that's better for our planet and for our society? So it seems like higher ed is the perfect kind of environment and warehouse to, start asking these questions and start addressing these issues. But there's just so much fear and not enough forward thinking, I think, in a lot of these situations that we're not quite there yet in most schools.
Yeah. It's gonna take. Oh well, I mean, take the California bill right now. I don't know if you've been following the AI bill. So there's this huge bill that is proposed around liability on this AI systems going towards the people who are building the models. So essentially, anybody who's building these models are liable for the effect of that particular model and whoever uses it downstream. So essentially, that's the big thing, right? It's like they're worrying about existential risk. They want to control the larger models, but they're putting a lot of innovation brakes on it because nobody wants to build these models or even operate in California if they can't experiment with it, or if they don't have a safe place to experiment or do research or even produce things that we can bring into the society today. So there is these two camps: the folks who are the doom and gloom and believe that AI is going to be an existential threat to us, and then those that think that this is uncalled for. I don't know how you feel about that particular bill, and of course, it's been talked a lot about in our circles, but maybe you can give a little bit more context.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's timely. It's SB 1047, but they just in the last 2 weeks they tweaked the language in the bill so that now companies are only liable for like imminent damage that is done or disasters that occur because of the technology. So it's not just because it was previously like if they didn't follow the regulations, even if harm didn't come from it, if they were creating things, and the new Grok image generation tool that has just come out that doesn't seem to have any restrictions on the types of images that you can create. And there's all sorts of wild images that are being created out there.
Have you played with it yet?
I haven't had a chance to play with it. I've seen a lot of the images, but I haven't set it up yet. Have you?
Yeah, I played with it, and my kids so they go on ChatGPT and they ask for all kinds of images, but he was being too sterile, ChatGPT, right? They couldn't get the things. So now they go in there and they ask for real people and this person in this and that. So it's actually able to do those pretty well. And they like that part of it. Of course, I mean, you can totally see it's AI generated, but at the end of the day, I don't know if you can see misinformation or how you can connect that to like harm today in the way that that's implemented. But maybe folks will come in and say, hey, this is not appropriate. And I don't know. I just haven't been able to see a connection to how they can be harmful right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with the election looming and what we saw, with the last election with the Facebook, the social media targeting that was done in there, certainly can influence public perception, certainly change people's thoughts and ideas. If you keep serving them content that, reinforces what they already think and believe, even if it's not real content, even if it's AI generated, they will want to believe it and want to think it's real. But I think the bigger threat really comes from, the open source models where there is no boundary, there's no gating at all. So there's no way to shut those down because you could pull that out. You can run Llama on any server anywhere. And if you can figure out a way to, to make it,
to fine tune it. Exactly.
Yeah. And we're already seeing better and better
image models as well. Like Flux, for example, they came out and now that's open source and you can fine tune it really, really easy with LoRa. You can fine tune it so fast. And there's so many easy instructions that you can do it yourself. So you can essentially make it do anything or create images on anything. And they're so real. They're really, really good. So it's amazing. Yeah. I think Grok uses the Flux model.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
It does.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, and we're seeing more like scams. These scams are getting better and better because they're using AI. So now it's not just the Nigerian prince that's calling you to have you transfer money. It's your kids in their voice that are calling you and having, engaging conversations with you and telling you that they got arrested and they need you to send them bail money. So, I mean, we have a safe word, but, in our family.
You've created that safe word?
Absolutely. Because it's too easy to, right now we're creating voice recordings that anybody could go grab and duplicate our voices and duplicate our faces and create avatars of us and have us say anything that they want us to say.
Yep.
So you just can't believe anything that you see digitally anymore until they figure out how to, create digital identity ownership or verification of the reality of, the videos or the images that you're seeing. So it's a really tricky, from that point of view, there's a lot of opportunities for bad actors to leverage the technology. But that's with any technology.
The cybersecurity world has lived in with that now for quite a bit. Essentially, there's this idea of like zero trust systems or zero trust environments. So you don't trust anything unless you know that it's verified, or so unless you put a stamp of approval on it. So anything that you see by default is bad or is you can't trust it unless there is a stamp. So maybe we move in that world. I mean, they're approaching it the other way. It's like, well, we're going to stamp things that are digitally created. So you're like the copyright and all that. But I was arguing with JC one time as we were talking about digital fakes and like deep fakes, when one of our episodes earlier on, and this idea of like, think about the live icon that you put on like video today. And there's this notion that it's like, because it's live, there's a different signal that you get. And like you enjoy that more, or you feel like connected, and there's notion that it's real, it's happening right now. And the stuff that's recorded, it's like less quality and like it's in the background, it's happening, it's there. You get entertained, you watch a movie, but it's a very different, signal. So maybe we move to that world where, it's like everything is fake, and then you just have your real stamp. You have your real Brian Piper, and then
that's right. Well, and I'm waiting for the intersection of blockchain and AI, because it seems like having a place where you could flag content that you have created so that it could be validated and verified. Yeah. So if someone sees you saying, something horrible, that they can go and check and see, did he really say, oh no, he didn't say that. That's not,
that's right.
That's in right. his digital identity.
Yeah. That's the only way that we can do the verification, right? Is through blockchain. So that real thing is going to actually, some system is going to check against your blockchain and say, no, Brian was not there at this time. He was here. And this is kind of,
Right.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and even the live, we're at the point now where, you can do a live AI avatar of yourself. Yes. And so even live may not, I may not be real right now.
Yes. Well, I don't know. This might be the Brian avatar. So
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's kind of bring it back, right? So I tend to agree that we're moving to a place where synthetic media is going to be very, very relevant. And even Mark Zuckerberg, when he gave a couple of interviews and he talked at the SciGraph with Jensen Wang and a few folks, but he's been talking about this idea of the feed becoming the content in that feed. Now we're getting to a place where it's all about relevancy and you get served. We don't care about your network anymore in social media. We care about what you would like and what you would enjoy and interact with. And so your feed becomes much more than just your network. We're moving away from that. So, but imagine now what Facebook wants to do and what Meta wants to do is they want to essentially create AI, avatars or AI personas or whatever it is, so then your feed becomes, generated for you. 99% of it gets generated for you via AI because AI knows your preferences and knows what's going to be relevant for you at 9 a.m. versus 10 p.m. and so on and so forth. So then it's kind of becomes more and more generation around AI. And we do personalization now, but we come back full circle to what we started with, that personalization in marketing, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's like everybody now gets personalized, but personalization happens because of AI and all of these different feeds. They can keep up with you because AI is able to generate that content. So it might not be a bad thing. I don't know. What do you think?
Instead of going to Netflix and scrolling around for 30 minutes to find something that you want to watch,
exactly.
You just tell it what you want to watch, and it dynamically makes it up for you, focused on what you like to do.
And maybe you had a really bad day, and your Apple Watch knows that during the day.
Right?
Your stress levels are so high, and you want to come and sit on the couch, and it understands that it says, "Artist Brian, I created a movie just for you."
That's right. All dogs and skydiving.
Exactly.
That's all.
That's awesome.
Well, and you start thinking about where this is going, and we just, we tend to think, oh, well, this is where AI is going. But now you start looking at now you throw in metaverse, now you throw in quantum computing. This whole landscape is going to be dramatically different over the next few years. And I don't even know that we can, predict. I don't even know if the best science fiction writers could predict what this is going to look like in 5 years. It's going to be a whole different world that our kids grew up in.
And going around and talking about our kids and thinking about education today, what do you educate your kids on? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and even recommending what they study. My daughter wanted to be a Spanish teacher. I'm like, I don't know that Spanish teacher is going to, when we have our AR glasses on that can automatically translate, I don't know that we're going to need a lot of Spanish teachers. So she's like, well, maybe global environmental studies. I was like, oh yeah, we're going to need environmental forever. Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be, you're good with that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that we're you have to think a lot about is this notion, as you're today, right? So we started by saying what's AI doing today for institutions, and you mentioned, well, we use it in our day-to-day in our marketing work, in replicating or in producing content. Schools, we're building tools around content discovery, for example. It's our content is a mess. It's all over the place. The courses that we offer, how often, when, what the hell is the outcome of this? If I take this program, what can I do? All these questions, it's around content discovery, right? So you see tools like Perplexity coming on board. So with those use cases are getting done today. And then over the next 6 months to a year, we talked about this AI agents or proactive agents that are taking the mundane things and are sitting in the background and doing work for us, right? They're making all the decisions. They're taking the decisions out of our heads and only bringing us the best of the best decisions. So you don't have to think about your meal planning because the AI does that. Now imagine not just the meal planning, but it does the meal planning. It orders the food for you, and it kind of anticipates. It looks at your calendar and it says, you know what, you're not going to be home today. You're going to be at a conference, so you don't need this much food. I'm going to get you less food. Or so that's the proactive components that I'm really excited about, because that's going to be in the near future, right? That's the 1 year mark, or even now some of these systems are coming online, but we're not really seeing a lot of them. So Salesforce the other day, they announced what they called like a couple of those,
their new sales features. And
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So marketing and sales are the are the two areas where these become really relevant. And we're doing work around that as well, to kind of work around proactive assistance. So it's like the work that you mentioned. How does a AI system just listen to all the signals from a student? And if they submit an RFI form, now the AI can kind of come up and say, okay, what's my goal here to get that student towards an application or towards a enrollment? So rather than just personalizing that first message, they have a goal to get them to their next journey or to move them through their journey. And then they dynamically do that particular, they send a message, or they actually call them, or they send a text message, but they decide what to do because they have the context of that student, they have the context of the institution, so they have all this context in there. And then they wait, and then they wake up a few minutes later, they say, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? Now imagine that for thousands of students, or all your inquiries, or maybe even your current students, is their data is coming in around their courses or whatever. And these agents are sitting in the background and they're personalizing every single next step for that student based on goals. So that's what I'm really, really excited about over the next year, because that, right now we don't know where things are going to be in 5 years. At least that's, obviously we just said that we don't know if AGI is coming, but at least for the next year, we're still going to need to recruit students. We still need to eliminate things from their journey and make that as easy as possible and give them the things that they need. And there's a lot of institutions that just don't have the manpower to do that today. So forget about the jobs being replaced, because we're always going to consume more and more and more. We're like creatures of abundance. Like we can never consume less, or there's no boundaries. So the more stuff there is, the more we're going to consume. So this idea of scarcity in jobs, they'll transform, but we're going to need more of those things. So there's going to be more demand. So when you think about the student side, like for the next year, I'm really excited about it because it forces institutions to start thinking more student-centric. A lot of people say that they are, but they don't do anything around it. It's like they just say, I'm student-centric. Meanwhile, they have these processes and people still take really long time to get back to them, to students. So it's just like, that's where I see the huge potential for us and the unlock. And yeah, productivity on the school side, that's nice, but ultimately, I feel that the student experience is going to be the one it's going to have the biggest unlock.
Yeah, absolutely. And watching, my wife and I have 6 kids between the two of us, and 5 of them we've gotten through the whole college process. We've got one that's a senior this year in high school, so he'll be the last one. But it is so difficult to figure out what classes they can take and what majors they should select, and trying to go through the course catalog, and all of that could be automated and personalized, where they could just have a conversation, be like, what sort of things are you interested in? What do you think you might want to do? And well, we have an open curriculum at University of Rochester, which means there's only one required class for, any major.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Which is great, and students love it. once they get deep enough in where they decide what they want to do. But for students that don't know what they want to do, it can be a little overwhelming to be like, what do you mean I can take anything I want? You don't tell me that I have to take, Psych 101 and, all the basic classes.
We need our boundaries. We need our boundaries.
Right. Yeah. And AI could help guide them through that. And, even beyond a year, and I don't even know if it'll take that long, but the accreditation process is too slow for AI right now. We need to be looking at what jobs are occurring and needed in the job market and then adapting our programs to fit that. And there are some institutions that are already doing that. Like in Texas, there's one school that created a wind farm program because they knew that there was a need for that, and they guaranteed students a $60,000 job upon graduation after a 2-year program because they partnered with those institutions.
It's amazing,
and they knew
right?
There was going to be that. Yeah. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we guaranteeing students, jobs at this salary when they graduate? It's just creating those partnerships and recognizing the need. And AI would be a great, assistant to help us find those matches.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The matchmaking, that's really interesting because, we can talk about this all day. Like the matchmaking is also very interesting because industry stuff, right? Like we look at it right now and we need certain skills or we need people to do certain things. But if you think about like you're depositing your higher education, you're making an investment and you're saying, I'm going to make an investment now. I'm going to put equity into this thing now, and that equity is going to grow this much 10 years from now. So what you're saying is that, by investing in the ROI is like, I'm going to put, let's say $100,000 into my degree today. And then in 10 years, I'm going to take out of it an extra $200,000, right? So it's like you're doubling your earning potential. Well, think about it the other way. It's like, why do I have to, I don't have to put the down payment. Like, I don't have that money right now. Why can't my employer put the down payment for me? And then,
Absolutely.
And then, I know that it's guaranteed, but it's like so much uncertainty that I don't know. So if I pick the wrong thing, if I make the wrong bet, then I'm screwed.
Right. But with AI, it would be able to dynamically reposition you and say, oh, okay, well, now you don't want to do that job. We got another.
Exactly.
That's right. We got another company that'll take you for
exactly.
this.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's have another episode around that.
I like it.
Well, Brian, this has been great. I think we can go and talk about this all day. We said that at the beginning of the podcast, but it's truly something that we were both really excited about. Huge potential. If you have not heard the first episode or first couple of episodes of AI for You, Brian does an amazing job of bringing that practical experience and kind of the actionable insight that you can kind of take in and the things and do that right away. Brings amazing guests like you talked about. Where else can people find you, Brian?
BrianWPiper.com, or I'm Brian W. Piper on LinkedIn, and I do lots of speaking. So you find me at your nearest higher ed or content conference.
Your local or national higher ed conference. Brian will be there for sure. Brian, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, everybody. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.